Mark here for Wisdom and Knowledge 5, and I have a great guest for you today. He is an expert on 5G geoengineering. His documentary is Frankenskies, website www.actualactivist.com. Matt Landman, welcome to the podcast. We are going to talk about, geoengineering, chemtrails, basically like we are under attack. So we're going to talk about, weather warfare, health warfare in the name of food, you name it. Welcome to the podcast, Matt.
Thanks, Mark. Great intro. Appreciate you having me on.
Well, this is just such an honor. And let's start out by talking about, the geoengineering and the weather modification, because I see a lot of posts out where they say, the skies when I was a kid and the skies now, but they've been doing this for a long time, haven't they? Because I remember when I was a kid, I think I was looking up in the skies and they were spraying the skies then in the 80s.
Well, yeah, it depends on where you live. Definitely not as much. I don't have the memories like that. I was born in 1980 and I
Oh,
don't
so was
have
I.
any.
So
Yeah, I have memories of fluffy clouds. I mean, maybe there was stuff going on. It was happening. Definitely not like it is now. So the skies today are not like what I grew up with for sure. And the skies that I grew up with are almost extinct. Sad to say. But how long has it been going on for is a great question. In the movie Frankenskies, which I recommend everyone takes a look at, even if you watch the first 10 minutes and get a taste of what it is, you'll see that not only has it been going on for a while, but that the military industrial complex was sharpening its tools back in the 1930s. So by now they've refined their weapon or their ability to do things with the weather to such a degree that nothing's off the table. So in the movie Frankenskies, which is a historical chronology, it's a chronological timeline of weather modification history, and it doesn't have a narrator. I don't narrate it. I didn't want to do that. I don't. Hopefully, I won't do that in the sequel either. And it starts in the 1920s. Like that's when they started filming themselves doing it. When did it begin? Wow, right? Like probably way before that. And to what degree, I don't know. But in the 1920s they started filming it, and then we were me and my editor friend, ally Nicole Vitrano, she was able to help and find through Texas A&M University archives. We went all the way back and found this awesome footage. A lot of the footage of Frankenskies, when we dropped it in 2017, had not been seen. Like a lot of it's now been pushed around and cut. And I mean, I've seen, anyways, 1920s in the movie. And then by the 1960s, it's really perfected as a weather weapon, and then it was like banned as a weather weapon in the UN after Vietnam. And I mean, so by the time the 80s came and you're seeing it, you said it was being it was I mean, not just research, it was happening then, right? Something was going on, whether it was cloud seeding, weather engineering, or whatever. There's a whole lot going on. So I'm excited to talk about it. What's
yeah.
up? Nice to be here.
And you talked about Agent Orange in there, and I've been to Vietnam twice. I've been to the Vietnam War Museum in Ho Chi Minh City, and I think there is still effects of that over there.
Yeah, there are. I've been to Southeast Asia and I saw people, um, adults primarily. So I'm not sure how many children are still being born with it, but there's still people being impacted by it. And the research says that what's it called? A shelf life, or how long things take to decompose in the environment. It's still there, right? Agent Orange doesn't go away. So it's still going to be causing harm to the Vietnamese people for generations to come. You're welcome, Dow Chemical. It's pretty sad, all the different chemicals that are. If the world really cared about the people and health and nature and all this sort of stuff, there'd be an international organization just on chemicals. On like
Sure.
keeping the chemicals out of us and nature and all these things. Instead, like fluoride's put in the water and all this stuff. Oh, I want to say
Mhm.
I know you have questions and all this first stuff, and I love that, and I appreciate it. I just wanted to say, because as you started off the conversation and you said we're under attack from all these different angles, it's so true. But I need and I want people to recognize that the attack, it's for a big reason, right? And it's like this process of like going through the process of remorse or something like that. You have to get to the bottom of it to get out, to get to rise above and to really see what's going on. But take a step back and see it from a bigger picture, bigger perspective. There's the they, like let's not get into that right now, but there's this force, these this evil whatever force, these people, military industrial complex, whatever, that are attacking us, the good people,
Mhm.
through the air, the water, the food, everything. Even like if I go to the store and try to get 100% cotton something, it's got synthetic stuff in it. Like everything, our frequency, everything is under attack. I mean, literally everything, if you think about it, every angle. And you can just shrivel up in the fetal position and embrace fear, or you can see the bigger picture for what it is and realize that they are scared to death of us. They're completely
That's a great point.
afraid. Yeah, they're afraid of our potential, which is inevitable, mind you,
Mhm.
right? Because there's a much bigger picture that the negative forces, I mean, there's all this stuff, the Bill Gates, the evil, whatever it is, whoever you want to put the finger on, and don't let that name or word scare you away. But there is something happening, like fluoride in the water and chemtrails in the air and the predatory technology and all this stuff, all these
Mhm.
things and all these lies on top of lies on top of lies. And I mean, even if you look into the depths of it, is to take away our sovereignty and to get us, entrancing ourselves all the way with word magic and all these things and spells and all these things. But why all the witchcraft and all these things? Because we're very powerful spiritual beings, and the day that we realize it is the day that all this ends. And so they have to keep it up. It's been going on for centuries. So how long it's been going on for? It's been going for a while, but I think this is our time, our generation, to break these chains of mental slavery, and I'm excited to talk about it.
And
So let me get that out.
we are awake. More and more people are awakening to this like crazy. And I think you posted something today on Facebook that said we are the Great Reset. And it's so true. So many people have connected with each other. So many people have opened the eyes of others due to what's going on. Wouldn't you say?
I'm glad you saw that post and that you resonated with it. And yeah, I mean, it's been unreal. For one, and this just comes to mind, before all of this, lockdowns and everything happened, we weren't all on the same page. There wasn't this unity and our numbers weren't as strong. But once the gloves came off and they showed their real colors, so many people came on board with the truth. I noticed that the creativity went through the roof because an algorithm started coming out censoring. So the censorship went up, right?
Mhm.
So
Oh yeah.
there was a backlash. Humanity got more creative. So then we end up with more satire and creativity in the memes and all these like this like revolution of a renaissance of thought and heart and soul, and like the soul is going to be triggered. I think that's one of the reasons why they stopped with all of the, because all of a sudden it was like, oh yeah, you can take the masks off and go back to school and everything can be back to normal. It's because like literally we were about to fight it. Like people were
Mhm.
gathering, we were coming together, every community was starting their own little school and be like, okay, well, we're going to create our own then. And they were like, oh shit, that's not what we wanted. We wanted to
No,
enslave
not
these
at all.
people. You know what I mean? And so we started showing hope and resilience. And so now they're scrambling and trying to figure out how to do it differently. But for sure, I it's actually really amazing because I was thinking about this today and in a meditation. I mean, my whole life is because I spend a lot of time alone. I mean, either way, I God has a plan in my life. Like I'm so shocked that I was able to become an activist, devote my life to activism. And then this COVID thing happened, and now all these people are listening to me, and people got locked in their homes. And my 2017 movie was there available for them. They weren't going to watch it as much. Seriously, they weren't. I mean, right when the lockdowns happened, I got like 5,000 followers on Facebook. And I was like, what? I thought I was censored on Facebook. Where are these people coming from? The censorship didn't matter. They were talking. They were talking to their friends and they're like, yo, who's the biggest conspiracy person that you follow? Because what the fuck's going on right now? And then they
Right,
found me.
right.
And it's like, that's just spirit doing its work. And it's like the negative can do all it can try, but we live in duality, we live in polarity, and it can't just be lies on top of lies on top of lies. Eventually the light shines through, and that's us. And yeah, thanks for recognizing and understanding my post, because like they call this all these things these great resets, but like nobody was ever thinking outside the box like they are now. And now people want to start communities off the land and off grid, and people are like thinking differently and even more spiritually centered. Like I can talk so many different things. I can talk my talk and walk my walk in front of everybody. And I was a kind of like shyer and afraid to do so a few years ago, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean. Yeah, I feel you. So what do you think, with all that's going on, and one thing that you were talking about that is a great point is they've even said, like the World Economic Forum has even said, our greatest threat is, disinformation. They know that they are afraid of us. You hit it right on the nose.
Well, and that's why it's a information war, right? There's so much. For instance, right when COVID came out, there was this thing called the Great Flood. I mean, do you know about um, what was it called? Agenda. Oh no, where everyone came together. The Bill Gates funded came together and did the simulation of the COVID to see
Oh
how it
yeah,
would
no,
run
I know all
through.
those. They've been doing them for years, those tabletop exercises.
Right.
There
This
was
one had a
Claude X, there was what was the one? Event 201. That's the one that you're thinking
yeah,
of.
great
Yes.
job. Yeah, good job. So there was Event 201, and then well, this is actually wild because we held this event 202 afterwards with a bunch of activists
Yeah, I
globally.
remember the Event 202 Instagram page, so that's how I know about that.
Yeah, and it ended up being can I curse on this show? I did drop the
Yeah,
F-bomb earlier.
no,
It
you're
ended up
fine.
being a shit show. It was a total shit show, this event 202. There was it was heavily infiltrated. I mean, even the I mean, I'm not even jumping to conclusions or something. Like we were in a chat of like 8 people, and on the sidebar we were talking about one of the people, and it wasn't even me, and they were like, "Oh man, he's actually works for the UK, whatever the operatives." You know what I mean? And it was a total mess, and it was obvious because they kept trying to mess it up. It was just a total zoo. If you look at the control of information regarding censorship, the algorithms. I mean, like I lost my YouTube account, and
Hmm.
it and like my Facebook gets heavily. I mean, it's a wonder that I still have my followership. I think they want me online and not in the real world because I'm still gonna be
Yeah.
doing what I'm doing, right? And they like to know what I'm doing and keep it kind of under wraps. Which reminds me, people are speaking out on October. I'm sorry, March 16th in Edinburgh, the capital of Scotland. There's a
Yeah.
chemtrail protest. Really exciting, and I'm going, and I'm going to be
Oh, that's
speaking.
great.
Yeah, and there's actually people rallying under the truth, but there's so much controlled arguments and all these things. So right after the lockdowns and COVID and all this, there was through Event 201. This was part of Event 201. So
Mhm.
for people who don't know, Event 201, the powers that be came together under a Bill Gates Foundation simulation, and they simulated a COVID type virus that went around the world and got really crazy in New York, and they had to do lockdowns and all these things. They literally did like a war games exercise simulation right before COVID came out, like in November. And then in March, we're in lockdown, right? It's like out of the blue, supposedly. So, um, in that Event 201, there was this thing called the flood. And it was this flood of information, misinformation on top of misinformation, just like, and
Yeah.
because the sources of information are compromised. I mean, Bezos owns the Washington Post, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then, like, we don't really have our trusted news sources. And then the people that are trusted, like you and I think I've talked to you for a short amount of time before the show, and I feel like that we're on the same page, and I can say that like we're genuine human beings. But like the most sources of information, they get millions more viewers than we do because we're stifled and censored, and then they get all
Exactly.
and then they can pile on all this stuff. They can even control the counter narratives with like Alex Jones characters and stuff like this or whatever. You know what I mean? That get the main scene, and then they're profiled as crazy tinfoil hatters, and they look all crazy because of the way that he portrays everything. But the flood during COVID, this is just a great example of how everything is controlled. The flood literally like took the internet and took CIA operatives and
Mhm.
like it even admitted in Britain already through freedom of information requests and whatnot. They flooded the internet and every other print whatever media, even social media, with plants and stuff, with information and counter information and like all these different narratives. So it's like, okay, for the COVID narrative, it's going to be, we're going to give them 10 different narratives.
Mhm.
Narrative number one, people dropping dead in freaking China and blah, 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 blah. Narrative number two, it got released from a lab and blah, 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 blah. Narrative number three, and then narrative number four. And then they even like come out with like all these things, which the truth of it all in this whole thing, which I came to find out and witness and whatnot, a lot of it was 5G being turned up, right?
Yes, I knew that. Yeah.
So
Hmm.
5G is getting turned up and turned on, and we're none the wiser at first, right? Like we're locked in our homes and we're getting tech. We're like people are talking on social media saying like they're putting 5G antennas like while we're being locked down, they're installing these things in the schools and whatnot. It's kind of weird. I remember that conversation, right? But what was crazy is, oh, I'm gonna butcher the number. There was a this crazy counter to the counter to the counter. Like the truth was going to be that 5G was making people sick. Radiation sickness is causing these symptoms, and yeah, maybe people might have been getting sick from COVID, something, whatever at the same time. But there's a lot of, I'm just going to let people know there's a lot of 5G making people sick, and that's a fact. Okay, so we can argue percentages or whatever all day, but like definitely 5G radiation sickness definitely happened while people were locked down, while this whole narrative was spilling out. And at the exact same time, before anybody was any the wiser, this narrative came out, which I doubt even happened, that 5G cell towers were being attacked in Europe and in the UK especially.
I
And
remember that.
yeah, and it was like, I forget the number. I forget the number. It's some occult number that 78.
Mhm.
I forget. It's an occult number, and I can look it up in 2 seconds. But either way, this certain number of cell towers were burned to the ground by crazy conspiracy theorists, while nobody was even had even gone there yet, mind
Mhm.
you. And these aren't. This isn't like activists are like us. They're nice, normal people, soccer moms, and all this stuff. They're not rallying together and burning down, and not getting caught, burning down 70 cell towers. That's just unrealistic and not happening. It's just
No.
literally, it's just not. But they were taking the potential for the truth to surface and squashing it with crazy conspiratorial fears and whatever. And that's the reason why you don't have cell service right now and all this, and already controlling the narrative before the narrative was even gotten to. And it's just like, if you can take a step back and look, I mean, they do it with almost everything, but if you take a step back, it's out of control. Like I could talk about Coca-Cola, for instance. This is easier for people to sink their teeth into. um I've been doing market research. I even have friends that became market researchers, where they just are good at doing research on the internet. They get paid to do it for their companies. Like I grew up in a day and age where there was no internet. The internet came out and there's all these different search engines, InfoSeek and all this nonsense. And then they got narrowed down to like Yahoo and Google and whatever. And now it's like people don't really grasp how important it is to be able to look for information and to see how far it's come, and to like understand like what's buried and what's changed and why, and how you can pay for the things to be at the top and all this sort of stuff. So I've, throughout my life as a person, so like, I mean, as an adult, so 30 years now, I've done um randomly done research here and there on Coca-Cola being not good, because I don't drink it. I never was allowed to drink it. We could have Sprite in the fridge
Hmm.
here and there, but like we
Okay.
couldn't have Coca-Cola. So it was like, what's so bad about Coca-Cola? And I think I was like, I never did this one because I was too lazy. I was always just making a volcano or something for these science fair experiments. But people were doing science fair experiments with Coca-Cola and putting the pennies in them, and whatever they like remove rust or whatever, or they would melt a penny in a month or whatever. Like they're really acidic. Coca-Cola is really crazy acidic and does all these other things, and then you can do it for industry. And so the research was always there. Like the children were doing the research, right? And I could always find it on the internet when it first came out on Netscape in the 1998 and whatnot. Graduated high school, 99. I was 18. And I've done little research projects on this, and I got marketing. I went to Virginia Tech and I got a marketing business degree, and I even did little case studies, Harvard Business School case studies on Coca-Cola and how they were so successful and whatever, and they had coca leaf in the product at first, all this nonsense. Never had I ever been told by like my resources, my research, that Coca-Cola is like healthy, right? So now, today, I was doing some research because I have this actual activists.com. I have a daily blog on there. And sometimes in the daily blog, I'm like shit talking like unhealthy things or whatever. I'm just like talking about like kombucha is good and whatever is bad, like triclosan, whatever, aspartame's bad, whatever. So it's triclosan. And then I'm like, I'm gonna do a little Coca-Cola blast, and I try to look it up on Google, just saying to shit talk Coca-Cola, and no joke, the whole thing, the first page, I had to go to the next page to find anything bad about Coca-Cola.
I'm
It
not
was telling me
surprised.
how healthy that it was. And so corporate interests are able to work their little magic, and things have been controlled and bought over and bought. I mean, like we can go back to Monsanto, but we can talk about Monsanto as well because they no longer exist. They were bought by Bayer, right? Bayer,
Hmm.
the company that's supposed to make medicine for people, now owns Monsanto, the company that makes people sick. It's conflict of interest. Department of Justice, DOJ. They used to put the kibosh on all these things. They used to say, no, you can't do this because of the monopolies and all these things. This was like back in the 80s, 90s. These places have been bought too.
Hmm.
There's like money in
Okay.
everyone's pockets through lobbyists, lobbying, and all this sort of stuff. And now, um, because of research funded by Coca-Cola, in the fine print at the bottom, research says that Coca-Cola is more hydrating than water. So there's research studies with human participants and double blind, blah, 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 all these studies. And science says because of the studies, because these research participants, they drank water and then they side by side drank Coca-Cola, and they retained more Coca-Cola per ounce per liter, whatever, then they retained the water. The water went through them easily. So they peed out more water than they peed out Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola is therefore, by definition, more hydrating than water. Therefore, if you want to be hydrated, um, Idiocracy comes to mind. The movie, if you've seen that, amazing. It's a documentary by now, but the movie Idiocracy, it's funny, you should watch it.
Hmm.
And then because they start feeding the plants Gatorade, and it's like they all die and they don't understand why. It's just like this idiot's future. It's a really funny movie. So that came to mind. But yeah, it's what plants crave. That's what they would say. It's like this whole slogan, but it was just like Gatorade was able to buy out everybody and convince everybody that even feeding your crops is better than with Gatorade than water, right? So it's like that's the direction we're heading, but people don't get it because of the slippery slope, one step at a time, one little freedom taken away. I went to the grocery store just now to right before your show to grab some couple things, and I was trying to do the math. I would say about five, maybe 10%, maybe 5% of the people were masked. Still,
Wow.
still masked.
Okay.
I know in North Carolina it's not like that. I'm in Oregon. I'm in Southern Oregon, which is right next to
Sure.
California. And where I live in Southern Oregon, it's just its own little piece of the puzzle. But sometimes I'll go out if I go out early where there's a lot of elderly people, it'll be like 20%. And it's like it never stopped. It never ended.
Hmm.
And COVID just like bred this version of humanity that I see them in their cars still wearing white masks. They're
I've
very
seen them
afraid.
out here. I mean, but you're right, North Carolina, not nearly probably as much as Oregon. So,
Yeah, they're living life in fear. And imagine what that does to the conscious. I mean, we could talk about it on a spiritual level. Oh, I want to talk about food. actually on a spiritual level whenever you want during the show, because there's like the printed food now, and
Oh, sure. I know what you mean. The
bugs.
3D printed food. Yeah. And the exactly. I know exactly what you mean. One thing I wanted to ask you, have you seen the movie Toxic Skies starring Anne Heche?
I did a long time ago, yeah, and everyone goes to the hospital because there's a virus.
Yeah, and it was about chemtrails, and it was just
Yeah.
like the narrative, which is because like the people like us, they were going for the for the V, for the shots, and it's like we would not do that. Remember they broke into the facility to get it's just like how the media, and Hollywood, corrupts our take on things is ridiculous.
Unreal. Have you seen Snowpiercer?
No, I'll have to see that one. Let me write that down. Snowpiercer.
Yeah,
Okay.
so literally, oh, it's almost within hand's reach, but the premise, or the what's it called, the abstract, or the summary of the movie or whatever, it is, and it's the night, it's like from over a decade ago. It's a movie from a little bit ago. It's science fiction. It's a great Hollywood movie, but I mean, it's a lot of fighting, whatever. But the premise is this: global warming got out of hand. So humanity tried to dim the sun with geoengineering, with chemtrails. So they don't say the exact word, but it starts off, the movie starts off with chemtrails, and they accidentally put humanity into an ice age. So all humanity dies except for this one train of people, and they're going around, and it's like the caste system. The front of the train is the rich, and the back is all poor, and they duke it out to see who gets to be on what train car or whatever. But either way, it's literally like, what is that, disclosure or predictive programming, or I mean social engineering. It's very scary and weird that a movie from like 15 years ago came out and starts off with chemtrails, like literally planes blasting the sky, and they're like, oops, we tried to fix global warming but it didn't work, and now they're doing exactly that, right? Because that's what
Yep.
geoengineering is. They've come out. So okay, so to back up, in 2017, I came out with Frankenskies, and before that, I was really trying to get it out in 2016 and 15, but all these things were getting in my way. When I finally was able to release the movie, it was on the edge of all of this media release of talking about geoengineering as a solution to global warming. Before then, geoengineering was a crackpot, chemtrail, conspiracy, tinfoil hat wearing word. Geoengineering was not a word in the mainstream world. So at the beginning of 2017, or maybe end of 2016, when they started hammering it and saying we've got a solution to global warming, it's geoengineering, I was able to plug some of that in the movie before it was released, and thank God for that. And the 12 clouds that they came out with, because they came out with new
Oh
clouds that
yeah,
were
I
all,
saw that.
yeah, they were all like chemtrail
Fascinating.
looking geoengineered clouds, and they had to give them new names because all these new clouds would come out. But how can new clouds come out? Like, come on, people. So now here we are in the present day, and the World Economic Forum, the United Nations, I mean all these big intergovernmental organizations, you know, like the IMF, who are evil bastards in my opinion, and all this sort of stuff. If you know the history of like the IMF and what they do, it's just like it doesn't really work out because they go into other
No,
countries
not at all.
and play boss and play God. And so here we are, and these what's crazy about it is these countries come together and they're like, yeah, we're coming together like the United Nations, and we're going to be this group of, but really it's the United States. United
Good
States
point.
and
Very
Britain.
good point. Thank
The
you.
United States and Britain, they have such a big vote that it's not really a bunch of countries coming together. It's just everybody listening to what the rich white governments have to say, which is sad. And so these governments have come together. It's just a handful, really, but they're saying they represent the whole world, and they're saying we need to act now. I mean, the UN has even issued a governance package on how they're going to do this to spray and dim the sun. So it's like it's now come to the forefront, and they don't ask us. And there's all these
No.
there's the there has been different treaties put in place, and different like we have rights, right?
Mhm.
We have rights that have been put in place on decision making that involves our environment. There's one called the Rio Declaration, and all these rights are, I mean, everything's being violated across the board. And behind the scenes, they're being told that they're doing a moral good and therefore it's okay that they're doing what they're doing. But I mean, at the end of the day, like they don't know the consequences of their actions. And if they do know, they know that it's nefarious. You know, it's a
Mhm.
classic, it's pretty sad, but it's this classic problem reaction solution where they're telling us they have the solution, which is geoengineering chemtrails, dimming the sun with aluminum aerosols, with, you know, barium and other metallics, making an artificial cloud layer, basically another atmosphere layer, like the thermosphere, ionosphere, another layer of atmosphere called the aluminum sphere, basically. And they think that this will not create a greenhouse effect, mind you, but
Mhm.
will dim the sun enough to hopefully not kill too many plants and humans and agriculture, but will make it so that the planet doesn't heat up too much because, you know, we're supposed to, in Manhattan's supposed to go underwater, according to Al Gore, right? Which never
Yeah.
happened,
Oh yeah.
right? None of these
Yeah.
things ever
Cool.
happened. If you like movies, please watch the movie Sand Wars, by the way.
Okay.
Sand Wars is great. I couldn't believe how valuable sand is, and it totally destroys the narrative of like islands being worried about global warming, sea level rise, and all that nonsense, because that's not even true. So under this fear that we need to act on global warming, behind our backs, behind the citizens' backs, there's this global dimming going on. It's
Mhm.
ongoing, and it's starting to come out in the public eye, and you know, we have to wake up the people. There's a lot. It's so layered. We have to bring it to the light of our friends, family, and peers, because these things are very ground grassroots level. People come to me, what can we do? What can we do? What can we do?
Mhm.
We're up against a lot. But it's like, for instance, and I'll pass the mic to you after this, and thank you. For instance, we did not have labeled foods growing up. It wasn't like this is organic, this is GMO.
No.
That came out, Monsanto and GMO and conventional, and this is being sprayed with this and that. That came out because of health activism,
Mhm.
people who cared.
Mhm.
Some people cared a lot and actually risked their lives, and some people even died. Americans, like normal people who cared a lot. GMOs got banned from certain counties, and they even got labeled. And now, if I go to the grocery store, there's a little 9, I think, that means organic, right? I'm pretty sure the 4 means,
It is. Yeah.
yeah, and the 4 means conventional. So on the barcode, there's like a 4-digit
It is.
code.
Yeah.
Thanks. And so now it's there. It wasn't there before. Same with fluoride in the drinking water. There's been activism enough that it's now not in some drinking water. Some people got it taken out. There wasn't an awareness that it was even bad at first, right? It got put in a long time ago, and people were like, "Great, it's great for my teeth. Thank you, government." But come to find out, there's never been a study, and it doesn't even bond your teeth fast enough when you drink it, and it doesn't. It wreaks havoc on your view. It's bad. It's altogether bad, and it's all connected because that's a byproduct of aluminum. So it likes to bond to aluminum and bring the aluminum to your brain and bring that Alzheimer's and dementia back home from the aluminum in the inoculations or the food, water, especially the aerosols, right? So, um, where was I? Oh, yeah. So we have to realize that the food was not always labeled. We never always had this awareness. It takes activists. I know it's a big
Mhm.
thing. It's like, oh my gosh, they're spraying. How much do they spend? It's like, look, NASA has a chemtrail program. They have a budget of $80 million per day, and they have a chemtrail program. They're spending probably lots of it, of their money, of their daily budget, on aerosol spraying. Okay.
Mhm.
Whether they are subcontracted by the US government or the UN or whatever, doesn't matter. All the details, you don't have to wrap
Mhm.
all your, it's because some of these details are not going to be known, but we can basically get the who, what, why, where, when, how, enough to convey the message to our friend, family, and peers, enough to raise the consciousness to the level where people are having the conversation and not just snubbing it, because that's where we're at with it. We're at a grassroots level of this awareness. I know that's hard to tell people, but that's where we are. So it's like Frankenstein's the movie. help bring the awareness. Like, yeah, eventually we can have like a bill passed or something like that, but we're up against things that are above our state government, even above our federal government. And the awareness isn't even there. Like the general population doesn't even know, like the general farmer doesn't even know. And they, I mean, not that the consciousness isn't rising, and it is, and that's amazing, but generally speaking, a lot of people are still stuck in a lower frequency, and that's where we all come into play. And it's important to honor the role of the activist to keep the flame alive for the next generation. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. And one of the things in Frankenskies is look at that interview on Colbert with David Keith. It's so obvious right there, and even Colbert said it. So,
Right. How much we need to bring awareness to it, or we'll be. I mean, that they were talking about sulfuric acid, and he was
mhm.
trying to like the mind control with the geoengineers like David Keith. And they're just trying to what they're trying to do in that segment is normalize it and program people to think it's okay and normal. And that's another tool that they have. Well, that's actually one of the biggest tools that they have is the mind control. So with the media, it's been like we've been so inundated with media. Like when I tell people that I don't have a smartphone or a phone, their socks literally are blown off. Like like they can't believe it. No one can handle it. I can't believe I was able to get myself a girlfriend. Like at first I was like, I got a pager, and like she laughed, and I didn't even keep the pager. Nobody was gonna page me. Nobody even cared.
No.
But I did. I got a pager when I got rid of. So what happened is I had a 3G phone, and the service went up, and they said we don't have 3G anymore.
You're
You
gonna
have
have
to get
to,
a
yeah.
you have to get an upgrade, and that was um not last January 1st, but a year and 1 month ago. So I didn't upgrade. And ever since then, I've just had a landline, and I got Ethernet on my computer. And I'm still able to function. And I have an internet company, all these websites, big
Hmm.
Facebook following. I do all these things. And people are like, how could you possibly? It's like I structure my time. It's like I don't need my phone when I'm going to play basketball or going for a jog or going to the store. Like,
No.
I'm sorry, I don't. I don't.
Hmm.
It's like I have maps in my car. Like there's certain things people are like, what about an emergency? I'm like, okay, look, if you really need it, get yourself a little flip phone, pay a track phone off of
Hmm.
Amazon. You can get a track phone off of Amazon, turn it off, put it in your glove compartment, pay the $30 to have the 90 minutes on the thing forever or whatever. And now it's in there, but you only if you crash your car. It's like go back to 1998 and you can do it. It's like not that hard. But anyways, I'm very happy to, you know, not be so inundated with the tech, and I'm learning how to engage with people in a different way, and it's beautiful. Like I talk to people on the phone more, and I interact more, and I'm like, no, let's meet at this place and this time and whatnot. But I think the world has been so inundated with media that they're just on blast with all of this information. They don't grasp what it's doing to their circadian rhythm, to their children's minds. It's like I didn't grow up with an iPad in my lap. And
No.
if I did, I probably wouldn't be able to conceive children. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So let's think about that. And then there's all these dystopian. See, I'm a film major. I keep referencing all these movies, which is like Handmaid's Tale and Children
Okay.
of Men. I wanted to go back to school. I didn't know I was going to make a chemtrail documentary. I didn't even know about
No.
chemtrails, but I
No, I
eventually.
used to actually work on a bunch of these TV shows. So I was just as a background actor. So I was part of this predictive programming. I'm like, I was actually in this show called what was it called? It was The Last Ship, and it was a Michael Bay TV show on TNT about the world, not existing because world being wiped out because of a pandemic. And it's funny, one year I was the guy that was, with the plague, left for dead. The next season, they bring me back on, a handful of episodes. And what am I? A White House staffer, and the White House is in St. Louis.
Hilarious.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
this was
and what
like
is
2015. So.
amazing. And then what do you think all that is about? I've tried to wrap my head around it. For sure, it's witchcraft, right?
Mhm.
So we've got witchcraft going on to some degree, but is it predictive programming? or is it disclosure? Because I know there's like they do like karmic disclosure so they can get away with. So I think that some of the predictive programming is true, like they're showing us something that is going to happen, but a lot of it is to keep. So there's people that are, down the rabbit hole, or truthers, or whatever you want to call us, and that's the most powerful people out there, right? And we can
Hmm.
rally together under the truth and actually do something. And probably spiritually, we're like evolving faster through meditation, all these sort of things. These are the people that need to be corralled and contained and controlled through frequency, right? The other 9 to 5ers that are clocking in and watching the news and just eating the Fritos and the printed KFC or whatever, they're pretty much like under wraps by frequency. Like they got their frequency controlled. They're feeding them themselves essentially. Like when I found out that, whatever, I digress. There's like the food supply is so tainted. If you eat bad food, like there's this amino acid called L-cysteine. It's in a lot of breads. If you're eating unhealthy, if you're eating like the store bought, like on the shelf forever, all the preservatives and whatever, L-cysteine is actually, and I thought it would not be true. It's human hair from China,
Mm.
and they make it into an amino acid. They like cook it down, and then they put it in this hair, and it's like this preservative amino acid, whatever. It's good for us supposedly, but it's like on a frequency spiritual level, that's no bueno, because we're supposed to be like rising and not keeping our frequency down every day by eating someone else's hair. It's weird. So on that tip, it's like you get these people that are on this truth tip, and then you control the conspiracy narrative through maybe own Alex Jones or something like that, let's just say. And then all of a sudden, all these people are really wigged out and worried about like Y2K. Like Y2K was nothing for people to scramble about and scramble over. But I met this old timer in Tucson, and he seemed very level headed. But this is like 20 years later, mind you. Um, and he had dug big holes and put refrigerators underground, and you could like, they're like hidden under the sand, but you could like brush the sand off and open them up, and they're full of canned goods. And he created
Mm.
these little refrigerator bunkers for Y2K, because it was like the end of the world, right? Everything's going to
Hmm.
stop working, planes were going to start dropping from the sky, and everyone's in chaos. Um, Again in the year 2012, and it happens. Like they keep bringing it back up. It's going to be the end tomorrow. That Obama did some movie that freaked everyone out, and it's all about like
Yeah, leave
being,
the world behind.
yeah, get in your bunker, and it's all freaking people out and all this sort of stuff. But what does that do to the frequency of the overall people, the populace, humanity, overall everything? Keeps us in fear. And
Hmm. Good point.
when we're in fear, we're controlled. When we're in fear, our I mean, the chemicals in our body are different. I mean, like we literally digest food differently. Like we're literally different beings when we're in that frequency of fear. If I'm all spun out in fear and I drink a coffee, I'm a nut job. But if I go into that coffee drinking with a different energy, a different frequency, it's completely different. Like fear is a very weird, scary place. And this realm that we live in, it has a tendency to be able to lock people in that frequency. I think it's like kind of a spiritual thing, but we can get locked into it and we can snap out. We're very capable, and it's amazing to be able to witness. But fear can be cultivated and controlled. And when you're in fear, you're useless. And so every time I feel like that there's a rising in consciousness, or where there's something for us to worry about, another freaking doomsday movie gets dropped or something like that, and we're worried about zombies, or we're worried about whatever. I think that probably the future's in our hands, and it's up to us to take the ship by the helm and freaking guide the way. And instead, we, the people, this powerful co-creator, manifester, God being, kind of like, we're amazing people, and instead we're over here scared to death and worried about it, and listening to people on podcasts and watching shows and stuff, and furthering that fear frequency, where really we need is hope. And that's why I named my clothing line Hope Sparrow, Spero. I named it, which is a Latin word, translate to I hope or hope, in Italian and Spanish and in Latin, it's the word hope. But the goal through activism should be to bring hope to the next generation through empowerment, education, knowledge, and not leave people just hanging, wondering. Like when I first got into chemtrail space, all the supposed activists in the films and whatnot in that space, they're all riddled with fear and no hope
Mm,
whatsoever. So then I started realizing that there is hope. You can rise above all of the toxins in your toxic environment by mineralizing. If you're fully mineralized and you're living your healthy, high vibration life, these things basically bounce off you. You don't need to absorb the radioactive strontium and radioactive cadmium into your bones because your bones are so brittle because they're lacking calcium and magnesium. Because on the periodic table, things that are nearby calcium and magnesium, your body starts to absorb these things from your toxic environment, trying to get them in your bones because you're needing it, because you're deficient. If you're not deficient, you don't need these things, right? And you're not absorptive as much. You're not absorbing these things as bad. I've noticed if I'm really run down and I'm lacking in minerals, that I can freaking feel the EMFs like way more.
mhm,
I'm EMF sensitive, but oftentimes I don't even feel it. Like if I went to the gym and I'm freaking on my A game and I've got a good meal in me and I'm like got good I'm mineralized, I'm not depleted. It's like these things don't even impact me. They don't even exist. So it's like honoring your own frequency. The word healthy self, if you break it down, because it's all witchcraft and this weird word magic, weird word game that we live in, like the word cure, it always meant to preserve something.
mhm,
The pharmaceutical industry hijacked that and said, yeah, we're going to cure your cancer. It always meant to preserve, to keep it going, not to fix it and alleviate it and take it away. So healthy self, if you break it down, it means heal thyself. And that's the truest thing that you should and can be doing with all this information. It's like take the information, empower yourself with it. Don't let it lock you into a space of fear, because there are two sides to everything. And in this instance, you can either be afraid of it or be empowered by it. Also, with the chemtrails, instead of pointing those chemtrails out and being like, we should be afraid of these things, I like to point out the beautiful blue sky, fluffy cloud days. Point those out to my friends that are on the fence.
good
Point those
point.
out to my friends, families, and peers. Point those out to my conspiracy friends and be like, yo, we never get days like this. Let's go play basketball. Let's go for a hike, because these days are abnormal. And
There you
pointing
go.
out the irregularity and the abnormal occurrence of these beautiful days in a high vibration, like love way, and not fear mongering and fearing people into thinking your way. It's a different approach, and it reigns true and comes home and like resonates with people way cleaner. And you can tell when the controlled opposition and the powers that be, they want to hammer everything home with fear. They want to get to people first with the truth, but in a fear space, making you think it's not true because it sounds so scary, when it's really not. When it's like, I mean, like if you go down the chemtrail rabbit hole, there's a lot of people pushing Morgellons disease and whatnot. And even though that may be true, the real story is weather engineering and geoengineering is right before our eyes. But if you want to freak people out and get people totally wigged out and then making them sound like total nutters, because that's what they do sound like when they get down to something super deep and super crazy that is unfounded in fact and doesn't have enough basis and just sounds super crazy. It's like you got to pick your battles and know where you're at and all that. Sorry for the tangent. Thank you.
No, this was, this is a great conversation. Now, what if somebody though wants to, are they able to find out, who is doing it in their area, or is there no real way because they don't, they don't have like a certain schedule? It just, you know what I mean? Because it takes some days off from spraying and such. What would you say to that?
Well, to find out, I mean, it's all black ops, so you're not really going to be able to get any good information, and that's
Mhm.
sad. When I lived in Canada, in the movie, I was able to go to the estate of Bill Vanderzam, and he's a big hero in British Columbia because he was able to actually roll back a federal tax. They were going to have the sales tax on everything to the tune of like 11% added on to everything, and they put it on, and the um what do you call him? The governor of British Columbia. I think it's a prime
Premiere?
minister, premier. Yeah, good job. The
Hmm.
premier at the time was Bill Vanderzam, and he was able to negate a federal tax as it was implemented upon the people. He was a big hero. And I went to his estate. He knows all about chemtrails, and we interviewed him in the movie Frankenskies and talk about him. Um, and he was able to he had his constituents contacting him about the spraying, and he was able to contact, this is like a governor, right? This is
Hmm.
basically the governor of California. Like British Columbia is a big province on the west
Oh
coast,
yeah.
where Vancouver is. Vancouver's their big Hollywood north. This is basically like the governor of California for Canada. And he contacts the federal government, and they say, yeah, we're doing it. And they sent him this document. A lot of it was redacted, black lines, but a lot of it was not. And it said, yes, we're doing it for research purposes. We got to stay on our game, or other countries are going to do it too. And, um, it's a lot of it's secret and top secret, but it's for the good. And some of it's just to fight global warming and to research weather engineering, but they're not going to, weather, yeah, engineering, weather control, or weather modification, but they're not going to tell you. Okay. And the they is even hard. So there's so many things going on at once, where there'll be like this pointing of the finger. Like where I live, there's an airport there. I live in a valley, and there's an airport just to the north, and the planes that fly in and out of the airport, international airport, they never have trails. But overhead, flying east to west, we have spraying almost every day. And these sprays, they'll go from small to medium to large trails. Those are all just different chemicals being mixed together. The idea of the contrail doesn't exist anymore, because these high bypass turbofan jet engines that are on these passenger jets that are on the wings, they're basically like compressed um, fan blades or propellers. They're not blasting heat like we're told.
No.
They're not blasting out heat. There's no lines coming out of the back. And when you see a plane going with nothing, that's normal. That's with no chemicals being sprayed out, no aerosolized aluminum and whatnot. But the conspiracy is so large that people can't grasp it. So where I live, flying east to west over our valley, not towards the airport, almost every day, and almost sometimes it's like 20 planes you can count. Like they're drones, I believe, but they'll go at it all the time, and there's no airport or base on the map where they're going. So it's like 30 miles to the east ish and 30 miles to the west ish. There's some bases that have all these drones, and they're outfitted with all these things, and they're on railways, at least I've
Hmm.
realized, but they're top secret, and they spray this valley and have been for decades. I mean, we're talking 30, 40 years now. And a lot of people come up and say, what the heck? And then there's also probably plants that are put in, like homeless people, even, that are like, chemtrails are, to control the narrative, make people think that it's a crazy narrative. And then they look it up on Google or whatever, and they're told it's normal or whatever. And nobody's any the wiser, because they're not telling anybody anything. And that's part of the big conspiracy, is the silence. If it started to leak, but like, for instance, where I live, I'm on the California Oregon border. And I just told you about the valley. To get into California, there's an agriculture inspection. They stop your car and
Hmm.
ask you if you have any fruits or vegetables
Oh
every time.
yeah, I remember that from going from California to Arizona. Yeah.
Yeah. And so this one time I was going through, and just my gut told me to give the dude a chemtrail flyer, hey, watch my movie or whatever. And he was really excited to talk to me. We went and wanted to have lunch. This um, federal official, essentially, or state official, that ag inspection guy. And he was like, you wouldn't believe the people that come through the ag right there, because it's a big marijuana cultivation thing. And there's Hmong Chinese gangs that come through with like big dogs and Gatling guns and roosters and all this stuff. And he's like, dude, we can't even stop them. Like it's crazy. We just asked them if they have fruit. And he's telling me all these stories. And he's like, well, the reason why I wanted to meet you is I have a best friend who works at the secret base, and he loads the chemicals on the drone planes when they come and land. And I really want him to speak up. And
Hmm.
he's like, can you guarantee his safety? This is a swear to God true story. And I go, no, can't guarantee shit. you know,
Exactly.
I mean,
No.
like he can come and film me, and I can black out his voice and all this stuff, but like they're gonna, if they want to know, they're gonna know. And he's worried about his family and worried about his job. He could lose his job, lose his livelihood, not get a recommendation, get fired, get killed, get threats. He doesn't want to even risk it. But he was the dude that loaded the chemicals on the plane. But it's like, It's all very top secret. And I've tried to wrap my head around this because people ask me so many questions, and I'm like, I gotta have some answers for people and all this stuff. How? Why? What? It's this. These people working in these places, they are on a need to know basis. They don't have all the
Mm,
information. Okay. They are compartmentalized. Okay. And if any of them really talk or think or whatever, they think they're doing something good.
yes.
Okay. They think that they're doing something good, that the global warming's gotten out of hand, that they need to do this, and they are on a need to know basis. They don't know all the information. They're so compartmentalized that they're just like, all I do is press this button. There's someone else doing the joystick, pressing the button. It's all so automated now. It's like they probably have sensors. I mean, there's so much, it's like whenever the sky gets to a certain thing, the drones go out. I would be surprised if there's hardly any actually manpower, like much behind it. There's not like people loading big tanks onto big planes and then people on the planes pressing the buttons and stuff. That's from like the 80s. There's NASA patented barium release rockets. This is like 1978 patent.
Ah,
And they still are utilizing these things. I see these rockets going and they have fins, so they kind of look like planes, but the altitude they're gaining, I've especially seen them in the mountains of Arizona, they're spreading the barium so that something else can come and spray in it. And I recommend to people that are just like scratching their heads listening to this let this ring true to you. Look up, wake up. I promise you. If you just start looking up and thinking, you'll start to be like, how come that plane doesn't have a trail and that one does, and they're side by side? And then you'll be like, well, these small trails seem to be interacting with those big trails. Looks like they're mixing chemicals. Or how come there's no planes today? Just look up with an open mind. You don't even have to open your mouth and talk to anybody about it. I don't care. Just start to think for yourself about this topic. And then when you can come to the conclusions and you see a day that's totally nuts, then maybe you can open your mouth and be like, what do you guys think of this today? Or you
mhm,
can bring up the beautiful day the next day. What's wild is they have to clean their palate to start fresh. Like I
mhm,
look at it like making a soup. You got to start with a base, but first you got nothing. Or like painting a picture. First you start with like completely clear canvas. And whenever there's a beautiful, perfect blue sky, it's because they let it happen, man. I'm sorry to
mhm,
say. And now they're going to come out the next day or that afternoon or evening and spray because it's all empty of their chemicals. And now they have a clean base to work with again. And
mm,
so watch that pattern too, because, no matter where you live, especially in the United States and the Western world, it's going on a lot. It's going on a lot more than it ever has been. And it's it's our children's futures. So it's like, do you want to live in an empire of lies or do you want to honor truth? I think that the more we resonate with truth, the more other truths become self-evident and the more our spiritual destiny awaits us. I
mhm,
hate to say it like that. I mean, I don't hate to say it like that, but I'm not trying to be a preacher. I'm just saying, like, truth is a frequency. It is. And as you vibrate on that frequency of truth, other truths are there. And there lies, your awakening from falsehoods and lies because there's so many freaking lies right now that we live in. And I feel that as like co-creator spiritual beings or whatever we are in a spiritual fashion, that if we are programmed to believe and resonate with lies and falsehoods, it holds us back from being able to be true creators because it's like a backstop. Like, why would we be able to manifest and create if we were believing nonsense, lies? It would just be chaos. I think once we find our true resonance outside of witchcraft, then there lies our true destiny, and it's inevitable. It's like time's not even really real. They're just trying to buy themselves time to escape karma, I feel, but it's only a matter of time till their day comes, and like heads will literally roll, sadly, you know sorry to say, and those people that are trying to bypass karma will have to be reincarnated as snapping turtles. you know, and they'll be one-legged snapping turtles to boot, and that'll be it. But you can't bypass karma forever. You just can't. But that's what they're trying to do with transhumanism and transfer of consciousness and this extension of all this and all this nonsense. They think that they can create a realm of only materialism and no spirituality and bypass karma through their ritualistic nonsense. But they can only do that for so long, and their day will come.
Exactly. Now, what about the 3D printing food? And let's get into the food aspect and what they're doing.
Okay, so I mean, this is like on a crazy tip, but this is just, I'll just say it. I read that there's more smart cities being built in Denver than
Hmm.
anywhere else, right? Even compared to California, like way more of these smart cities being built. And I started thinking about like this idea that there's bunkers. I don't really like to entertain these doomsday ideas, but imagine that there are all these bunkers of, I mean, crazy bunkers, even underground cities in Colorado. And maybe there's humans, maybe there's hybrid humans living in them or whoever they are. Like in a weird dystopia, I envision like literally like these humans are living underground and maybe for like even a generation or two. But on the ground level, like something happens, world disruptions of whatever happens, where the world is convinced that because of CO2 and all this nonsense, that natural foods are bad, and slowly but surely the humans are fed only these weird printed 3D printed synthetic foods or whatever. And then slowly but surely you end up with like a synthetic human, right? That's like
Yeah.
eating this nonsense and further putting themselves into the matrix through Neuralink and the metaverse and having kids on the metaverse, starting business on the metaverse, buying property on the metaverse, and literally embracing this digital revolution to the point of like their lockdowns are like, yeah, they don't care because they don't leave the house because they're literally a computer within a computer, right? And they're being told because Deepak Chakra's already digitized his consciousness, total sellout, and telling people, oh yeah, just digitize your consciousness because eventually you'll be able to embed it into a cyborg clone of yourself and transfer the consciousness over there and live forever. This is what will happen when fertility is totally demolished through 5G and inoculations and all that, and chemtrails and everything. And in the next generation, when people cannot procreate, this cyborg revolution, like live forever to save humanity, will be on the front page of all the controlled media, and people will buy this. Okay, so one generation later, we've got like half human cyborgs. Like, I mean, I saw a patent on Facebook yesterday about a battery sensor that can run on hemoglobin, which is in the blood. So we're literally like looking at the Matrix 101, where people are becoming part robot, and they're gonna buy it all because of what Elon Musk says you can go to Mars if you become a robot. I don't even know exactly what's gonna happen, but I foresee, and then we can take a more grounded approach. But I foresee like the next generation of humans becoming this like lower vibratory enslaved kind of like, they say singularity is like the way to go because everyone can have the thoughts at the same time and be all robotic at the same time, like the Borg, and it's total nonsense. It's like an abandonment of sovereignty and soul and everything that is good, and God. It's a total abomination. But imagine if you're like a rich evil a-hole and you want to go live in your bunker for a couple generations and then come out and then be like the only human, right? And like you're getting the spiritual downloads and you're like, I'm God, only me and my families are the only humans, and there's these robot slaves left, right? That have been chemtrailed to death. Like they're not even gonna be breathing that air or anything, right?
Hmm.
They're going to be in these bunkers with their filters and their little greenhouses. I think they have maybe potentially some evil scenario, but it's this long game. And how does it even exist? It seems like maybe we didn't necessarily win World War II. It seems like maybe this evil has been pervasive because, like, if you look at this Operation Paperclip and the creation of NASA, it was by war criminals out of Germany who now have the chemtrail program, and they created MK Ultra and probably Hollywood and all this nonsense. It's like it seems like the long game. World War II never ended, and we're in this long game for our souls. And maybe like the I don't know, there's certain trigger words that I don't want to say, but the Germans during World War II, they summoned actual interdimensional demonic beings and consulted them, it seems. And they were like, yeah, fry the pineal gland. And so they, like, pineal gland was put, I mean, sorry, fluoride was put in the nation's drinking water. Then the next year, NASA came out and was like,
Hmm.
hey, we're going to do this. We're going to go to the moon or and whatever. Um, I think the next year NASA went to the moon, if I'm right. Fluoride, and then NASA went to the moon, or maybe the creation of NASA. Either way, I just saw that that breakdown of that timeline. But if you look at the bigger picture and the long game of it all, our humanity is at stake, and this is really a battle for our souls. And honoring who we are and our true evolution is the name of the game. So, lastly, on my tangent, we're we're spiritual beings having a spiritual evolution, and our destiny is it's set in stone. It's there no matter what. All right. And there looks to be like a step, like a gap, like this period in time is being hijacked, and the powers that be want to keep us from getting to where we're supposed to be going, right? And so it's if you've ever had a car that like the starter goes out, but you can like pop the clutch if you drive stick, and you can pop the clutch and just you don't need the starter. You can pop the clutch and start driving the car and first if you know what you're doing,
Mhm.
right? That's where humanity is at. Our destiny is right there. Our timeline is there, and our DNA is programmed to do that. But there's a hijacking going on. And the further they pull us from that frequency, the more they think they can control our destiny. But regardless, it's always right there. And all it takes is like one heart opening from one human being or something like that for the rest of us to recognize that frequency and to see really why we're here, what we're here to do. And it's nothing to do with what the ego serves. You know, the ego is over here barking all this nonsense because it doesn't want to die. Eventually, inevitably, we're here to rise, and we will. But all of this quelling is where the activism comes in to shine light on the darkness that and whatnot, and all the quelling that's trying to beat us down. And it really comes down to honoring yourself, like honoring your
Mhm.
input. Like, are you willing to rise your resonance and to honor your inputs? Are you going to keep eating Cheetos, Doritos, and watching, sports and yelling at the TV and whatnot? Like, you can. It's up to you. It's really up to you. And if you own your frequency and really get deep and like practice meditation and learn about these different things and how to detox your body and really rise above all these things, then you can be like this. You can be what everyone, you can be Neo. You can be that spark that we all need. Like
Mhm.
it's not necessarily that person that you look up to. You can be the spark that lights the match that fuels the fire that is this rising of consciousness. That's why we're here, is to rise consciousness. And it seems to be like there's an attack on consciousness and a hijacking of it, really a hijacking of consciousness. And so that's why we're here, to bring light to it. It's not just chemtrails, EMF, fluoride. It's everything. It's all combined. You can't
Mhm.
cherry pick. And that's why I created actualactivists.com, because I didn't want to cherry pick truths. I wanted everything to be included. You know, it's not a compartmentalized topic. You can't be, I had this old friend that used to say, you can't be half pregnant with the truth. It's all or nothing. You can't just pick a couple things and run with it and be like, no, I'm only an activist for this one thing. It's like, no, it's all interconnected, and the truth doesn't care who you are.
Mhm. Yeah. One thing I wanted to ask you, since you know about this stuff, do you have like a preferred, like, because it's important to have things like shower filters. Do you have like a preferred shower filter that you recommend or anything? I know that's a
Shower
tough
filter.
one.
Well,
Yeah.
no, that's great. I don't. Okay, so for the listeners, if you have fluoride in your water, which a lot of people do, unfortunately, um, firstly, like, be an activist. Go to your town hall, see what it would take to get it on the initiative to get it voted out of your water. It's really actually very easy. It's expensive for them to hold the corrosive material. They have to wear hazmat suits to administer it. It's never been proven good, but it's expensive. It's never been proven good for any health. And like communities all over the country that have removed it, it's not like their dental um, problems went through the roof or anything. Nothing has ever changed. There's states like Oregon and Portland, the city of in the capital, where they don't do it, and people's teeth are just fine. And at the end of the day, it's expensive and it's toxic and it's corrosive. And Harvard research study says it lowers the IQ of children. And like, what's a safe dosage for my pets or my toddlers? It's like it's not, and it's cumulative, and it's like how much, it's bad. It's altogether bad. So fluoride in your hot bath, your shower, it can, and it's absorptive in your skin too, but it also attaches to the gaseous chlorine when your water's steaming, and then you breathe it in into your lungs, and then it goes right into your bloodstream, which it doesn't even go through like the process of your liver and kidneys and stomach and filtering or anything. Like it goes right to your bloodstream when you breathe it in. And so, and then also soaking in it in the shower and bath. If you have fluoride, it's nice and important to figure out a filtration system. People that have enough money, you can install a reverse osmosis system in your house and have all your water filtered, and that's great. You can also, long story short, charcoal. So charcoal filters are the way to go. I don't have a recommended brand because I moved to a town. I specifically moved to Ashland, Oregon because of they don't have smart meters on
Mm,
their houses. They don't have fluoride in the water, and Oregon doesn't have like sales tax and income tax on. There's a lot of reasons why Oregon's awesome. So here I am, and I felt called here. A lot of reasons, a lot of latida, but yeah, a lot of communities do have fluoride, and if you get a charcoal filter and you put it on your shower head, the charcoal will remove the chlorine, and then the chlorine won't be there to make it all gaseous and take the fluoride into your, and it removes a lot of the fluoride as well. So that's what I recommend. The reverse osmosis will remove it as well, but it's like the that's going to be a bigger system and take down your water pressure. But the charcoal filter, I highly recommend that. You can tell the difference immediately, and then it makes it smoother. The water's better on your skin, all that sort of stuff. It's important to take all these little things into consideration because they're all cumulative. Like you can think about your EMF radiation intake and mitigate it by getting yourself an EMF meter and then seeing what's around you. And then, oh, maybe I want to just unplug this Wi-Fi at night or get it on a timer where it turns off at night. Things like that. Put the phone in the other room or in a Faraday bag while you're sleeping. Things like that will
mhm,
add to your health and overall well-being over time. I especially like going to the sauna and sweating. It's important to utilize your skin as an organ, as a detox methodology. A lot of people don't realize this or do this or keep this up as like a practice. I think, monthly or weekly. I like cold plunges as well. There's so many things that I do actually. I mean, I could go on a lot that I try to do to keep myself healthy. But taking in your daily practice is important. I do coconut oil rinses, oil pulls in the morning for my oral health, and I haven't gotten a cavity since I started doing this about 11 years ago. So that's been something. And yeah, just everybody can do more, right?
mhm,
I think it's important. And also blue light, right? I started selling blue light glasses on my website, Spero Gear, SPERO gear.com. But the blue light, just understanding what it is. All of your devices emit blue light, your phones, your computers, your TVs, and the blue light is on the spectrum of the light that we see. Like what we see is light. And that's broken down in a color spectrum, which is Roy G. Biv: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. And that breakdown is based on the size of the light waves in nanometers and how that light refracts on our eyes, and we process it through our iris or retina and all that, right? So red light is larger in waveform if you measured it than like blue light or orange light or whatever. And red light is harmless because of its size. It's actually like people who do red light therapies, they say it's beneficial, right? And just based on nanometers, just slightly different in size, you start to go down this Roy G. Biv scale of the rainbow of light, the Pink Floyd rainbow, this prism breakdown. And blue light, it's near violet and ultraviolet light, which is in sunlight. And blue light confuses our bodies and makes us think that we're in sunlight because of where it is on the spectrum. Okay. So the blue light coming off of our devices, it'll throw off our, unless it's noon. So if it's noon and you get on your devices and you blast yourself with this blue light, your body's like, oh yeah, it's noon. That makes sense. it's not that detrimental. But if it's not noon, right, then your body thinks that it's noon, essentially, and your clock gets thrown off. And if you're looking at your devices in the middle of the night or before bed or whatever, your body is like, oh, it must be noon. It's bright, bright, bright sunlight that I'm getting blasted with, is what your body thinks. Okay, it throws off your whole system, throws off your sleep patterns, throws off your dopamine receptors and your melatonin precursors, dopamine precursors, like producing these things that make you happy. And eventually you keep looking at your phone before bed, you get depressed. You don't realize why, but it's because not enough chemicals are being produced in your brain and body and all that stuff. And you haven't done enough due diligence and research regarding your health, honoring yourself, and, the things that you expose yourself to, which is radiation, your phone, blue light, all these sort of things. But you can mitigate these things through knowledge and awareness and empowerment, which is activism.
Excellent. Well, we've been going for about, an hour and a half. I really appreciate you coming on as a guest. I'll post the links to actual activist website, to Frankenskies and Spiro clothing. Such a great guest, Matt. Really appreciate you coming on.
Well, I appreciate what you do and your cadence. I appreciate your energy and your integrity and your honesty. And I hope that, you keep doing what you're doing. And I would love to come back on. And it's important for people like us to just keep pounding the pavement. Sometimes it's like, am I going to be doing this forever? And sometimes I'm going to be doing this forever.
Exactly. I know what you mean.
So
And another thing too that you mentioned that you didn't mention about like the routines with the health, another great thing is grounding. Like I love
mhm.
going to the beach and just doing some barefoot grounding whenever I can when the weather's right. It's so great or being out in nature.
It's important. There's so much to talk about that. I've been studying and reading this Rudolf Steiner, and he says that this generation, it's so important for us to find a 50-50 balance. And I know that's hard, but 50-50, half of your waking life should be not on tech.
Mhm.
Not on tech. And the other half, get on your devices, whatever. But we need to find a balance and show that to the children, that there's polarity, duality in this world, that there should be a balance. Grounding is so important. I'm glad you mentioned it, and we'll just take a second. Um, we need to learn about that. The controlled media, the powers that be, they have, I mean, everything is under attack. Even this very simple knowledge. This is
Mhm.
very simple truth, and simple truths are attacked because they're so powerful. Okay. So tree hugging, oh, tree hugging is for the hippies and all this nonsense, and rubber shoes, and there's nothing to it. Rubber shoes are a conspiracy, you guys. I'm sorry. Let's just be real. We're bombarded by electromagnetic fields and electronics and dirty electricity. If Tesla had his way, we wouldn't be. But the way that electricity is set up through Edison's means, we are bombarded with dirty electricity from our outlets, from our power lines. There's electricity everywhere, and we're getting hit with it. And the electricity wants to get out of our bodies. It doesn't want to hang out inside of us. Okay. We want to resonate at about 7.8 hertz, the Schumann's resonance, the resonance of the earth. That's where our bodies want to harmonize at. Our heart, our brains, our kidneys, all of our organs, they all have a different frequency, and they all come in tune with one another in this beautiful orchestra harmonization. And it has nothing to do with all this tech that we're surrounded with. Okay. So we don't want all of this stuff that we're getting zapped with. And it can flow right out of us if we just give it away. The electricity wants to find a way out. So it builds up in our bodies, and then we go to sleep and we don't give it away out. Go put yourself into something conductive that conducts to the earth. Wet grass, wet sand, like even semi-moist dirt. I mean, like if you put yourself in something that's not conductive, it's not going to let all the electricity out. But literally, like your feet in the grass, your hand in the grass, even conductive enough, like the trees help. But I've watched it on a meter, like the difference between like semi-moist grass and just really dry grass. Like semi-moist grass, all the electricity in your body immediately piles out because it's just conductive. Think about conductivity. And so grounding is so unbelievably important. I've got grounding mats and I'm making grounding sheets now. They'll be out in like a week, and grounding pillowcases for at night. But if you have a smart meter in your house, learning about that, it surges dirty electricity through your outlets. You can likely opt out and get the old meter, the analog meter. It's important to know about the power company's utility electricity meter that's on your home and how near that is to your bedroom or whatever. And that you can get that off, and that it surges dirty electricity through your home and emits a lot of EMF radiation. But yeah, grounding, nature, nature is your friend. I've never gone out into nature and regretted it. Like
Hmm.
someone's like, you want to go for a hike? I'm like, oh, come on. I don't got a lot of stuff to do. I get out there. I'm like, everything snaps, changes. I think that even wearing rubber shoes and being out in that field, that all of the the dirty energy and dirty electrons and the transfer of energy, you can feel it just by going out into the forest, even without grounding with your shoes off. But that's an extra plus for sure.
Hmm.
But I recommend getting out there, people. I mean, what do the lockdowns show us? That life is precious, and get out in the world and experience it and show the children that there's something else. I've got um, children that I'm surrounded by sometimes, and I hate when they get on devices and they want to experience the world through the screen. The world is right here, right
Hmm.
before our eyes, and the next generation will be either popping into the metaverse and playing sports with their goggles on, or because they're afraid of germs and whatnot, and been
Hmm.
inundated, and their parents have not shown them the way, or they'll be experiencing reality the way that they should be, and it's up to us to show them the way. So thank you. I appreciate you having me
Sure.
on, and yeah, all these things are really important. So much to talk about, and time flies by.
Yeah, we'll have to do it again. Definitely.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks so much. Wisdom and Knowledge 5, everyone. And we are on BitChute, YouTube, for the time being, Spotify and Rumble. And follow me on Instagram. And all the links for your websites, Matt, and your Instagram will be linked below. Thanks so much. Really
Thanks,
appreciate
Mark.
it.